Malik Nabers is going to be a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL this season, but you may not be ready for that conversation. Hey guys, welcome back to Dynasty Trading Room. Today we're going to go through the top 24 wide receivers in Dynasty Fantasy Football with a full rankings list, as well as breaking them down into tiers. Remember, this is for Dynasty, so youth is going to be taken into account, as well as their long-term outlook and the offense around them. For a lot of these players, the quarterback situation is going to be key, so just keep that in mind when we get into this full ranking of the top 24 receivers. But we have a ton to get to, so let's go ahead and kick off the list. Starting off, we have Tier 1. Only going to have 2 players in here. Pretty simple. It's going to be Jamar Chase on my number 1 spot. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL. He won the Triple Crown last year, and he and Joe Burrow nearly carried this Bengals team into the playoffs without a defense, pretty much. Cincinnati gave him a 4-year, $161 million contract extension this offseason that locks him into this elite, explosive Cincinnati offense with Joe Burrow at quarterback, who was extended as well. Jamar Chase is going to be a top 3 wide receiver for probably the next 5 years, if I had to guess. When you turn on the film, it's not hard to see why. He's an elite speedster with serious ability after the catch. Like, just gash open a defense at any given moment, and you can see he did that time after time. He's effective in every part of the field, short, intermediate, and deep, and that production is just unbelievable. He's going to take the top overall spot in my Dynasty wide receiver ranking. We're going to move on to the final player in Tier 1. That's Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. Jefferson has dominated the league since he's stepped in, and his production has been independent of whoever's a quarterback. There's been Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, some backups that have come in and out, but throughout it all, Justin Jefferson has been a premier playmaker in the NFL. I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. He's just an absolutely elite route runner. He has reliable hands, and he's the alpha wide receiver of this Minnesota offense that now has J.J. McCarthy under center at quarterback. Even if McCarthy disappoints, which I don't think he will, Jefferson's still going to have an absolutely awesome year in fantasy football, and Kevin O'Connell's system allows quarterbacks to thrive. This passing offense is going to be fantastic for Minnesota, and Jefferson's going to have a great year 6. Like I said, that's the last of Tier 1. I feel pretty confident that both of these guys are future Hall of Famers, and they're kind of the elite tier of wide receivers you can have in Dynasty, where they're pretty much untradeable, I feel like. Heading into Tier 2, we have Malik Nabers of the New York Giants. Another LSU product. He put up 1,204 receiving yards in a rookie season with a revolving door at quarterback. You never knew who was going to start week to week, but he was always fantastic in fantasy, no matter who was at quarterback. He's only 21 years old heading into Year 2, and he just put some fantastic plays on tape. He's such a great deep threat. His yards after catch ability is insane. He makes some spectacular catches. I think he's going to be a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL this year. New York also just selected Jackson Dart in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft, so they do have a guy locked up as their long-term franchise quarterback if he pans out. That definitely brightens Nabers' dynasty outlook, but we can move on into number 4, which is CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. Lamb still had a fantastic fantasy season, even with Dak Prescott missing most of last season with a hamstring injury. Dallas is kind of one of those boomer bust teams heading into 2025, but I think if Prescott can put some decent plays on the field, Lamb will be able to make them. George Pickens is going to line up opposite of him. That's going to spread out the offense a bit more and get some of the defensive pressure off of CeeDee Lamb. We know who Lamb is. He's an absolute playmaker. He can make plays from the slot or the outside. He's such a good route runner, and he's going to dominate this league for a long time. Next up, we have Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions. He's one of the most consistent players in the history of fantasy football, putting up over 1,100 receiving yards and over 6 receiving touchdowns in each of the last 3 seasons. I feel pretty confident with Jared Goff still at quarterback that he's going to do the exact same thing in 2025. They love to use him in creative ways in the red zone, and even with Ben Johnson in Chicago now, their former offensive coordinator, I'd be shocked if he's still not their go-to red zone threat. And again, you're getting one of the safest players in all fantasy football on your dynasty team at only 25 years old. I think he's becoming a bit underrated. And with Detroit's offense full of elite playmakers, it's hard for the defense to focus on just one receiver. Next, we got Puka Nacua. The Rams receiver set the rookie record for receiving yards in a single season, putting up 1,486 back in 2023, but a knee injury early in 2024 limited him to only 11 games played. But he still managed to put up 990 receiving yards, which is just ridiculously efficient. It's kind of hard to argue against ranking a guy at the wide receiver 6 spot here when he's done nothing but produce at an elite level since stepping into the league, even as a 5th round pick. Speaking of that efficiency, Puka Nacua is averaging 88.4 yards per game since entering the NFL, which is just one of the best marks of all time, just behind a guy we mentioned earlier, Justin Jefferson, so having him ranked this high is not a problem for me. Moving into Tier 3, we have Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars. This Jags offense has got a lot more star-studded with Travis Hunter, the number 2 overall pick in this year's draft. But focusing on their wide receiver 1, we still have Brian Thomas, who was really the best of any rookie wide receiver last season. He excelled as a deep threat. He was just fantastic. Coming out of LSU, he logged 1,282 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. That's a ridiculous number for a rookie. He's only 22 years old, and I expect him to finish as a top 10 fantasy receiver consistently going forward. Like I said, this offense should open up even more with Travis Hunter opposite of Brian Thomas Jr., and hopefully Trevor Lawrence at quarterback can stay healthy this season to give Thomas a more consistent presence under center. We can go and move on to one of my favorite players in all of football. That's Drake London, a guy whose breakout I called last summer a couple months before it happened. He's such a well-rounded receiver. He's a great deep threat. He's a fantastic route runner and one of the most physical players in all of football with just elite contested catch skills. He is such a rare player at the receiver position. I think he's going to dominate this league for a long time. And again, at only 23 years old, he had a top 5 fantasy season at receiver last season. And his 187-yard performance in Week 18 last year with rookie Michael Penix Jr. under center really makes me optimistic that that quarterback and wide receiver duo can be among the best in the league in a season or two. So his dynasty outlook going forward is just immensely positive. I'm super excited to see how he can improve on this past season. I think he's going to be just absolutely fantastic. And this Falcons offense is going to run through Michael Penix Jr., Bijan Robinson, and Drake London for at least the next half decade. Nico Collins is ranked number 9 for me. He only played 12 games during 2024, but still managed to put up just over 1,000 receiving yards, which, like Puka Nacua, is extremely efficient. He's such an awesome deep threat for CJ Stroud, and if the Texans can do a better job protecting their quarterback, he should be way better in 2025 as long as he stays healthy. Houston did add a bit more talent at receiver with Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, 2 Iowa State wide receivers that they drafted. Higgins and Noel were 2 of my favorite receiver prospects in the entire draft. I think they were great value selections where they got them. So like I said with a couple other guys, this offense should be a lot more open, and defenses will have trouble tracking just one of these guys down. So Collins should have a lot more space to work with. But again, it all rests on if Houston can protect CJ Stroud. They did a terrible job of that last season, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nico Collins finishes in the top 10 at his position. Heading into our next tier, it is headlined by Ladd McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers. He and Justin Herbert developed a fantastic chemistry right off the bat, and this was during his rookie season, playing in the slot. He's just such a great route runner. He's so shifty with reliable hands. Los Angeles added a great complement for him in Trey Harris in the draft, so this offense should operate even better through the air. And I expect Ladd McConkey to at least match his production in his rookie season, so he should finish around the top 12, maybe a little bit lower, but I don't think he's going to regress by any means. He's going to be ranked in the top 10 of my dynasty wide receivers. And sure, you can brand this as a bit of an overreaction from a strong rookie season, but he still has Justin Herbert at quarterback long term, and I think he's going to be this team's leading receiver for a long time. Jackson Smith and Jigba from Seattle is going to be my number 11 receiver for Dynasty Fantasy Football. He is a new quarterback in Sam Darnold, who was signed to a 3-year, $100.5 million contract this offseason in free agency. The big question mark is if Seattle is going to be able to keep him from being sacked a ton of times. We saw in the playoffs Sam Darnold really struggle when there was pressure on him because that Vikings offensive line wasn't able to hold up very well. Darnold is primarily a pocket passer, and notoriously, he is not very good under pressure, but JSN in the slot should be his go-to target. Even with Cooper Kupp being added into this offense, I think JSN is going to be their number 1 guy yet again. Heading into year 3, he had a breakout season this past year, and even though he's going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold, I expect his production to be very similar to what it was in 2024. Hopefully he has another really strong season. Moving into number 12, we have A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles. We know that this offense operates through the rushing attack with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley being absolutely elite, leading to a Super Bowl championship, but we cannot forget the contributions of receivers A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith to this offense. A.J. Brown is one of the best receivers in the NFL when healthy, but his health can be a question mark at times. He did struggle to stay healthy this past season, but I'm willing to take that as a bit of an outlier. If he can stay healthy this season, play all 17 games, I think he definitely has a ceiling to finish within the top 10 at the receiver position. Remember, he's still only 27 years old. He has plenty of good football left in him. He has such a physical presence at receiver with great contested catch ability and the speed to win after the catch. He's going to be Philly's wide receiver 1 for the next few seasons, and he's one of my favorite players in the entire NFL. And registering over 1,000 receiving yards in 13 games doesn't hurt anything. Moving on to our next tier, we have Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Arizona Cardinals. Heading into the league, he was the best prospect at the receiver position in last year's draft, just ahead of Malik Neighbors for me. His route running skills are that of a true blue chip prospect. And while he and Kyler Murray weren't on exactly the same page back in 2024, they're going to have another whole offseason to get to know each other. So I'm hoping that chemistry will increase in 2025. And I'm not doubting Harrison's talent, so I think he could absolutely break out and be a top 12 player at the receiver position for fantasy football this year, making him an elite dynasty asset. I wouldn't be shocked if he follows in his father's footsteps. I think he's going to take a step towards greatness, and it's going to be a pretty harsh reality check for those sleeping on him in Dynasty Fantasy Football. At 14, we have Ted McMillan of the Carolina Panthers. He was just taken number 8 overall in the 2025 NFL Draft, and this was a prospect I really liked He's my second overall pick in rookie drafts, but we're not doing rookie drafts today, obviously. I think he's the future go-to target for Bryce Young in this Panthers offense. He is a really unique combination of size, speed, athleticism, and ability after the catch. He's listed at 6'4", 219 pounds, but the way he moves, you'd think he's a lot lighter than that. He has the physicality and contested catch skills of a guy like Drake London or Mike Evans, but he's so good and so fast after the catch, which leads me to believe that he can be an alpha wide receiver one for this Carolina Panthers offense, especially with good receivers around him. Guys like Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, and Jalen Coker are going to make sure the defense can't entirely focus on just him. And I think Bryce Young and Ted McMillan are going to make a fantastic duo going forward. Travis Hunter's at 15 for me, and yes, he is a very polarizing asset in Dynasty Fantasy Football. I think he should be a top 5 pick in rookie drafts, but I'm acknowledging the risk here that he could end up playing more defensive back than wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's going to have no trouble playing both sides, but there's a big question mark in which side he's going to play more. Obviously, he has generational ball skills at wide receiver and defensive back. His instincts are ridiculous, especially on the defensive side of the ball. But Jacksonville made it clear once they traded up for him that they want to play him on both sides. I don't know to which extent he'll be playing each side of the ball. That kind of is the big risk we have here. But if you want to take a swing for the fences, take a big risk, go ahead and draft Travis Hunter in your rookie or startup drafts. Because if he ends up playing a significant amount of offense next to Brian Thomas Jr., he's going to be absolutely elite. Obviously, some parts of his game need to be polished. It's hard to be the best player on the team at both wide receiver and defensive back, but I think that could be a ceiling. I mean, in college, we saw him make some ridiculous catches, and he's the definition of an elite athlete, so I'm super excited to see what he can do in the NFL. The final player in this tier, we have T. Higgins of the Bengals. Like Jamar Chase, he was awarded with a lucrative contract extension this offseason, locking him into this elite Bengals offense with Joe Burrow at quarterback. I've said all this before, you know what I'm talking about. He's such a good wide receiver too next to Chase, with great athleticism, a history of production, and great physicality at the receiver position. The big question mark about Higgins, though, is if he can stay healthy. He missed significant time in 2024. Once he got onto the field, he was very productive next to Jamar Chase. So Higgins, the former Clemson star wide receiver, I think he's still a super valuable dynasty asset, and at 26 years old, he's proven himself with a history of production and a secure role in this Bengals offense. Moving on to our next two, we have Garrett Wilson of the New York Jets. After winning Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2022, he's kind of struggled to take that next step, although it's pretty fair to say it's not entirely his fault. New York's never had a great quarterback in place to throw him the football, and he has flashed as a playmaker at times. New York did just bring in Justin Fields to play quarterback on a 2-year, $40 million contract in free agency. However, Fields has been a pretty boom-or-bust quarterback, so I think Garrett Wilson has a very high ceiling this year, but also a very low floor. If you want to take a risk, go ahead and draft Wilson in dynasty formats. I'm just not sure if he can finish as a top 12 receiver this season, but I would love it if he proved me wrong. Moving on, we have Rome Odunze of the Chicago Bears, one of the most well-rounded prospects in the entirety of last year's draft. The Bears' offense was pretty underwhelming in 2024, and a lot of that was because the Bears couldn't protect Caleb Williams on the offensive line side of things, but that has improved significantly this offseason with the additions of Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, and Joe Tooney. Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles have put together a pretty good offense on paper. It all depends on if they can execute on the field, but I believe in Ben Johnson as an offensive mind and play caller. That's why I'm so high on Caleb Williams as a quarterback in Dynasty, and why I believe Rome Odunze can be a very productive wide receiver in fantasy football. Last year, he was drafted to be the team's wide receiver one and put together a pretty solid rookie season. And while he is facing target competition from DJ Moore, Luther Burden, and Colston Level, I think he can still put up prolific numbers in this Bears offense. I think it's going to be a very high-volume passing offense, so they will be able to support multiple receivers at one time. I thought Odunze was a fairly pro-ready prospect coming out of Washington, and if he can take the next step in 2025, he can be the Bears' leading receiver. Devonta Smith is going to be the last player in this tier on the Philadelphia Eagles. He just won a Super Bowl championship and has been a really strong presence in the Philadelphia Eagles receiving room over the past couple of seasons with A.J. Brown. He should reprise his role as the 1B receiver in this offense next to Brown, with Jalen Hurts still at quarterback, so I think his numbers will be very similar as they have been the last couple seasons. Pretty much nothing has changed, except obviously the offensive coordinator, but it wasn't an inside hire, it wasn't the guy they brought in from outside the team, so I think the offensive philosophy is going to remain very similar. Devonta Smith just gives off the vibe of a guy who's going to stay in Philadelphia for a long portion of his career and is going to have a very long career in the NFL. As long as he stays in Philadelphia, I think he's going to be a top 24 wide receiver in fantasy football. He's a really great player. Moving into our final tier here, we have Zay Flowers of the Baltimore Ravens, who had a breakout season in 2024 with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. Obviously, Lamar Jackson, the best quarterback in the NFL, was able to support him for over 1,000 yards receiving. And the heartbeat of this offense was in the rushing attack with Jackson and Derrick Henry, who had a fantastic year on the ground and was awarded with a massive contract extension. But Flowers did have 1,059 receiving yards. It was a big play threat in this Ravens offense, next to Rashad Bateman and Mark Andrews as the primary pass-catching options. And as long as Lamar Jackson's under center, Zay Flowers is going to continue to be extremely relevant in Dynasty Fantasy Football. At number 21, we have Xavier Worthy of the Kansas City Chiefs. I really considered putting Rashee Rice on this list, but with the combination of him coming back from the ACL tear and the fear of a looming suspension, I'm going to put Worthy on the end of this list instead of Rashee Rice, with the expectation that Rashee Rice could work his way into my top 24 pretty quickly. After being a first-round pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, Worthy really worked his way into this Chiefs offense as a steady contributor over the final stretch of the 2024 season and into the NFL playoffs as well. As such a versatile, speedy receiver, I think Andy Reid is going to find a ton of ways to use him creatively in this Chiefs offense. Because of how much of an outlier Worthy is as an athlete, I think the sky's the limit because he found the perfect match in head coach Andy Reid. And I think he could shock a lot of people with a breakout year in 2025. Next, we have Jalen Waddle of the Miami Dolphins, only 26 years old, but his production, as well as the rest of the players in Miami's offense, has fluctuated depending on whether quarterback Tua Tagovailoa is starting and healthy in Miami's offense. Waddle is a premier playmaker when his quarterback's healthy and on the field, and he's put up over 1,000 receiving yards in each season during which Tua has played over 11 of the team's games. If Tua does stay healthy, I think Waddle's going to return to form after a pretty poor fantasy season in 2024. I think he's going to bounce back this season. If the offense can remain consistent, Waddle is still a great player, locked in a long-term deal in Miami's offense. Second to last player here, we have Jordan Addison, who is the perfect complement to Justin Jefferson in this Minnesota offense. With J.J. McCarthy under center this year, I think Addison has a great opportunity to develop some really good chemistry with McCarthy early on in his career. It's obvious that Jefferson, Addison, and tight end T.J. Hockenson are going to be the main three receiving threats in this offense. And with such a raw quarterback under center, I think Addison's fantasy finish has a wide range of outcomes, but he's still only 23 years old, plenty of time left in his career. So I think he can continue to develop as McCarthy develops. And Kevin O'Connell's offense helps out quarterbacks a lot. We saw Sam Darnold have a career-high year in Minnesota last season. I think J.J. McCarthy could come along a lot quicker than we expect him to. And again, I think Addison's going to be a great wide receiver too, as he has been going forward in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Our last player on the list is Jameson Williams, who broke out this past season for just over 1,000 yards. This was his first full season, and he put up a whopping 17.26 yards per catch in this elite Detroit offense, next to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta. And he's the true definition of a big play threat. He can go off for an 80-yard receiving touchdown at any point of the game. And again, this is a very high-volume passing offense with a ton of passing attempts from Jared Goff. So Jameson Williams should continue to be one of football's best deep threats. That's all I got for you guys. Those are my top 24 Dynasty Fantasy Football wide receivers with rankings and tiers. If you want to see more, go and subscribe to the Dynasty Trading Room YouTube channel. But for now, that's all I got. I'm Joe, and this is Dynasty Trading Room.